Well, good morning, and welcome to our January first meeting in January of our trust. And I said everybody ought to be congratulated for being here. It's above and beyond the call of duty, I think. So, but we do have a quorum, and so we'll get started. Do we have any citizens to be heard? If not, our next is approve our minutes of our December 2nd meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We've got 5 items on our consent docket. Do any of the trustees have any questions about any of those? No? Then do I hear a motion to approve our consent docket?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Individual consideration, and that's probably the main thing that we really needed to have our meeting today so we could approve the contract for our new Flyer America purchase of 18 40-foot CNG heavy-duty transit buses with an option for an additional 18. So if you'd like to, Jason, kind of cover that for us over the next.
Sure, yes. I would love to talk a little bit about this item. As mentioned, this is a contract with New Flyer of America. It's a 5-year contract for the purchase of 40-foot CNG buses. Back in October, the board authorized an RFP for us to receive proposals for our next bus purchase. We advertised on October 12th and 19th. The bid deadline was November the 15th. And as you can see there by the summary included in the memo, we actually received 3 responsive proposals. So you can see the prices there along with the delivery, estimated delivery time. The committee evaluated the proposals and determined the proposal from New Flyer to be the best proposal for us. The base price for the buses, $459,679. with delivery estimated in 15 months. And you can see the delivery and the price both for New Flyer are better than what was submitted by the other proposers. So we're very excited about the response we received to this procurement. We feel like we received a really good price on the buses, particularly when you think about, and just as a reminder, the base price for the buses we purchased off of the DART contract were right around $453, and as you can imagine, that contract was for a considerable amount of buses, hundreds of buses, compared to the 18 here with the 18 options that we're looking at. So we thought we did very good in terms of pricing and delivery. One of the things that this approval of this contract will do is it will allow us to essentially immediately order 11 replacement buses. And as you'll recall, when we began our bus replacement round this time, we had 18 buses that were past their useful life. We've worked to replace 7. We still have 11 to go, so we'll be able to address that need essentially right away with approval of this contract. So that's a very good thing for our customers, for our system, for our employees that operate them and maintain them. So we're very excited to do that, and again, we have all the funding in place to do that. And then the 5-year contract will actually allow us to not only replace those 11, but also give us the flexibility to replace the next batch of buses that will come due, and those are our 2009. So anyway, with approval of this item here, we will be able to make a significant improvement in the condition of our fleet.
Kind of, if you've got it on the tip of your tongue, kind of update us on the fleet as far as CNG and diesel and age of buses and how many, just.
Sure. Well, right now, we could talk a little bit about age. Again, with the purchase of the next 11, we will have all of our buses within the FTA's useful life, which is 12 years. So we won't have any buses past their useful life. The next batch of buses, and I believe there's 15 2009 models, those will need to start to be replaced around the 2021 time frame. So again, we're in good shape really on replacement and maintaining our fleet within the appropriate age once we make this next bus purchase. So in terms of propulsion technology, currently we have, of our 59 buses, we have 2 that are hybrids. One is a 2011 that we purchased new, and then we added a hybrid recently, a 2012 model. In terms of CNG propulsion, we have 2 2011s and then the 6 new Flyers that we just ordered. So that puts us at 8 on the CNGs. And then again, adding 11 more will obviously increase that percentage. So again, the plan is to continue to, as buses come up for replacement, replace them with an alternative propulsion technology, primarily CNG.
Propulsion technology. I had a consultant look at our sales organization, and we don't have any salesmen. We have revenue generators. I thought, well, that's true. I better. So, all right. Any questions on item A? If not, I would have a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We do have one other item, and that's adoption of a resolution establishing a revised bus stop policy.
So the revisions that we have proposed for the trust to consider with regards to our bus stop policy really include kind of taking our existing policy that was approved back in 2013 and enhancing it to not only include provisions for how bus stops will be placed, where they will be placed, but also what level of amenities can be associated with each bus stop based on activity, which is primarily boarding. So back in 2013, if you'll recall, the trust approved a bus stop policy. That policy was based on recommendations from the Nelson-Nygaard Transit System Analysis, where they had suggested to us, we need to even out our spacing. We had, in some cases, too many stops too close together was impacting our ability to make schedule. So we put this policy together to basically identify where bus stops would be placed, how they would be spaced, and then also that the bus would only stop at designated bus stops. So again, with the revisions to the policy, we have kept all of that previous policy intact, and what we've added is saying, okay, the bus will stop only at designated stops. However, we will stop anywhere, essentially, for someone with a disability or to respond to a reasonable accommodation request. So we were doing that in practice anyway, but we added that to our policy. And then the other piece of the policy that is really an addition is taking a look at each type of stop and deciding, okay, based on the number of boardings, will we have just a sign? Will we have a sign and a bench, or will we have a full shelter? And so the criteria that we've outlined initially is, of course, every bus stop will have a sign and really that entire suite of signs, not just the identifier, but what routes serve that stop and the unique stop ID, along with the customer information panel that we still have yet to attach to a lot of the, or actually all of the locations. And then with the next tier is we've decided where on average we have multiple boardings a day, then our goal is to have a bench at each one of those locations. And then kind of the final tier is we've identified anywhere we have more than 10 boardings on average per day, that's where we're going to concentrate our efforts on making sure we have shelters in place. So really what the policy does, it just provides us as staff, guidelines and helps us prioritize, in particular, bus shelter placement. Now that we have our 75 additional shelters out there and we start continuing to work on that list, we really felt like it would be important to have some guidelines that the trust could adopt that we could then follow.
All right. Any questions? I'll have a motion to approve.
Move for approval. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next item is ratification of claims and payroll. It's excuse me, if there's no questions, then I would have a motion to ratify.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, our financial reports. Jason, if there's any items you'd like to highlight.
Sure. So looking at the budget to actual report, that's actually the first financial that's in your packet. And if we'll go to page 3, I believe. Hang on, I'm sorry, let me get there. Sorry, page 2. Page 2 on the first financial in your packet, the budget to actual for 5 months ending November 30th. We'll take a look at the transportation operations first. I think what I would direct you to is if you look at the total operating revenues for our transportation operations, you can see that we're basically where we were last month in terms of comparing our actual revenues as a percentage of budget. We're at 95%, so you can see we're trailing our estimated revenues through 5 months of the year by about $444,000, again, looking at that very bottom line. If you look up at some of the line items above, you can see we continue to come in just a bit under budget in terms of revenue collected through the fare box, whether it be pass sales, fare box revenue, or Embark Plus fares, all within the 94 to maybe 97% range of budget versus actual. Really the biggest discrepancy you'll see, and I know we've mentioned it before, but is our federal grant revenue. Through 5 months of the year, we're $477,000 under what we had projected. And again, that's just simply a result of not having processed and been approved for our FY17 federal formula grant. The status on that grant is we have one more administrative item to complete. Let me back up. We have submitted it to the FTA. We have one more administrative item to complete before they approve it. We hope to have that in place in January. The earliest we'd be able to start seeking reimbursement would be January, hopefully no later than February. So I say all that just to say the grant is in process. We probably won't be able to, you won't see additional reimbursements until January financial at the earliest, which we'll actually review in our March board meeting. So looking at operating expenditures, again, virtually unchanged in terms of percentage of comparing the actual expenses versus budget. In personal services, we continue to see a significant amount of savings there, $666,000 under budget. Again, this is one area, though, that we almost just as soon not have savings because the savings is created by vacancies. And so our goal ultimately is to fill all of our open operator positions, our maintenance positions. So that savings primarily is being created by those vacancies. Other services and fees continues to be over budget by about $112,000 or 106% of what we had estimated. And then if you'll just kind of follow the line items down, you can see supplies and fuel are under budget. And again, as a reminder, the budget that you see on the financial here does reflect the budget amendment, the reduction that we approved last month. So all in all, you can see operating expenses actually exceed operating revenues by about $594,000 through 5 months of this fiscal year. But again, once we begin receiving those federal grant reimbursements again and we take our first draw on our state, the subsidy we get from the state, we should be back in good shape on revenues versus expenses. The next page here is a look at our parking operations. Again, starting with the revenues, looking at total operating revenues, we're $183,000 under what we had projected through 5 months of the fiscal year. And again, you'll notice most of that variance is in monthly contract parking. We're about $189,000 under what we had budgeted. So we do continue to see some declines in our monthly parkers, and that's reflected in our budget numbers here. The other thing that's driving that discrepancy a bit is the fact that when we develop our budget on an annual basis, we try to allocate it out, into monthly amounts. And when we went back and reviewed our monthly allocations, we probably had the front quarter of our year a little bit light in terms of revenue. So we're starting to see, some of that catch up with us as the revenue projections increased as the year went on, and we're not really seeing a recovery in a bunch of monthly parkers. So, however, with that said, and I'll just jump to the operating income line. With that said, we're still almost $1.3 million to the good when you compare revenues versus expenses. So then, I guess we'll look at page 4. This is the River Cruises operations. Again, a very similar situation to what we looked at last month. We're in good shape in terms of revenues versus expenses. Revenues as a whole are over budget. Expenses as a whole are slightly under. And you can see a surplus there of about $159,000 year-to-date in river operations. So we're doing very, very good there. And then next is Spokies. Again, you can see that total operating revenues are slightly ahead of budget at about $143,000 year-to-date. Operating expenditures, on the other hand, are $59,000, significantly under budget. But again, there is a payment to the Transit Cash Fund for some of the personnel costs associated with supporting that operation that we have not done yet. So once that transfer, that payment is made, those expenses will increase. So. With that, I'll be glad to answer any other questions on the budget to actual, and then make a quick comment just as an information item on 2 additional financial reports that are included.
Okay. We don't have any questions?
So there's 2 additional financial reports that I wanted to make sure you were aware of. One is our interim financial for actually 3 months of the fiscal year through September. And again, just as a reminder, and I won't go through the report, but the interim financial basically compares where we're at this year through the first quarter to kind of where we were last year through the first quarter. So where the budget to actual, we spend most of our time kind of talking about how are we doing versus budget. The interim financial will actually give you a sense of how are we doing this year compared to last year. It also contains some information related to our pension, and there's a few new statements, or I should say different statements. There's a statement of cash flow, and I believe a statement of net position included in that report as well. The other difference is the interim financial actually includes all funds, including the city's cash funds that are used to support transit and parking, whereas our budget to actual that we look at each month is trust funds only. So keep that in mind as you're reviewing it. The management discussion and analysis is probably a good place to start on that report. And those comments really, I could really make those same comments about the other report that's included, and you should have received a binder that looked like this. This is our annual financial report for the fiscal year FY 2016. This is the one that is actually put together by the city's accounting department, or I should say division, located within the finance department. You should have also have received a letter from the audit firm that performed the audit, and we do have I believe this is considered to be an unmodified letter, which basically means we had a clean audit. There was no significant findings or any issues that they've asked management to address. So appreciate all the help from accounting, appreciate what our finance staff does on a daily basis to put us in a position to receive a good audit letter like this.
All right, thank you. You all have a comment on the audit or anything?
I echo Jason's comments that, credit to the finance staff at Cotpa and the work that they do and their work with accounting services, and not only getting the documents together but having a clean audit. I think is really good and positive for us.
All right, thank you. All right, No other questions? I'll have a motion to receive our financial reports.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? All right. Program reports. Our first will be the Oklahoma the city streetcar report, and I guess, Jesse, you're going to give us an update. And
I will. Yeah, good morning.
how long have
Happy
you been
New
on the
Year.
job now? A
What's
month,
that?
2 months?
Yeah, about 2 months, yeah.
2 months in your position?
Yep. Good morning. Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a good holiday. So I'm here to give an quick update on the operations and construction of the streetcar line. So with that, we will jump right to the operations slide. So we recently had our first negotiation meeting with Herzog Transit. We had that December 20th. Herzog flew into town, met with the board, legal at Cotpa, and negotiations went well. We had about a 5-hour meeting. Negotiations are ongoing. We are looking at having a conference call, follow-up call, January 12th, and then we are having a in-person meeting again, January 20th. Embark continues to reach out to state oversight authorities. We have invited ODOT to come to our internal streetcar meetings. The idea behind that is that, we'll help guide them and they'll help guide us in the setup of their offices, and we will, once the streetcar system starts, everyone will be on the same page as to what's needed and how the system should operate. Last week, the Embark staff and Trustee Cooper, we went to Kansas City, checked out the system, met with Tom, the director there. We rode the streetcar at night and met with staff and visited the storage and maintenance facility. I'd like to orient you with the picture here. So on the right side of the screen is Kansas City's pylon, and in the middle is the Kansas City stop, and on the left side there is the Kansas City kiosk. In the distance there you can see Trustee Cooper and Mr. Scroggins checking out the kiosk. So meeting with Kansas City, we were able to get a lot of ideas, a lot of information, bring that back, and implement that into our operations as well. Moving on to construction. So we met with Herzog, had a construction kickoff meeting December 13th. All of the city departments came together. Everyone's on the same page. They've set up weekly construction meetings every Tuesday at 8:30. We've had 2 so far. They tend to be a little long, which is good because we're digging in deep to the details. Herzog has moved their construction project manager to Oklahoma City, and they've also set up offices at Northwest 13th and Classen, 1330 North Classen. Herzog's developed a preliminary schedule that shows construction starting in early January. The actual start time has moved a little bit. We're starting to look at January 17th of actually starting construction in Bricktown. Construction will actually start just east of BNSF Railroad on Sheridan. The first section of construction will be utilities along Sheridan between BNSF and Mickey Mantle, and then the utility construction will continue around the loop there with actual construction of the railroad line following behind that. Moving on to the storage and maintenance facility. So construction continues on the storage and maintenance facility. In the picture here, get you oriented, in the distance is the Union Station, and to the left of the screen is north. So if you look to the far left of the screen, you can see the office space of the storage and maintenance facility has been formed, reinforcings in place, and under slab plumbing is in place. They've recently poured the slab there, so that's in place. And in the middle of the screen, you start working your way south. You can see the maintenance and office parts area, and then kind of in the middle there where the forming is sticking up out of the ground, that's the maintenance pit, the service and inspection bay. And then moving further south is the heavy maintenance bay, and then south of that is the covered wash bay, and then a covered storage track. What that allows is that allows for all 6 vehicles to be stored under cover in case of a hailstorm or to prevent damage. Contract completion date, the slide here shows September 23rd. They're currently working on a change order that's actually going to push that date back to October 2nd. And Herzog still has a milestone to start placing track inside the storage and maintenance facility in May 2017. The hopes are that they'll be able to place that track in the storage and maintenance facility yard and also on Hudson to possibly allow for storage of the streetcars when they arrive early. Moving on to the next slide here, this is a picture of in car A of the number 1 car. You can see that they've started framing the walls and they've set the roof on. Since this picture in the report, they've actually framed all 3 sections of the first car. They've moved the first car into painting to do the preliminary painting of the framing, and then they're going to move it back and start skinning the car. Like I mentioned earlier, we're looking at storage options, possibly at the storage and maintenance facility and possibly on Hudson or other areas. The first streetcar is still expected to be delivered June of 2017. Moving on to the rail procurement. So this is the same picture you saw last time of the rail being stored up at the Dolisi yard. We're still expecting our second shipment of special track work to arrive in July of 2017. The first shipment has actually slid back to April because of some milling issues overseas. They're setting up their welding operations for the Dolisi area and also the storage yard off of Southwest 10th. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be doing a flash butt welding, which is where they heat up through electricity, they heat up the rails, and they take the 57-foot sections, put them together, heat them up with electricity, and weld them that way. And then they'll take the 350-foot sections, they'll drag them through downtown and place them into the track slab, reinforcing, and then weld continuous welding for the entire track. So the entire track will be a continuous welded track section. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, good report. Brings us up to date. Any questions? All right. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Parking system report.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Happy New Year. Trust everybody had safe travels in on the snowy roads. Quick comment on the snowy roads. Parking staff was on site since 10 p.m. last night to about 5:30 this morning. They did take a short break and are back on site addressing the snow that fell during that time period. I toured the facilities this morning before the meeting, was quite pleased with their work overall. The Arts District garage, I've heard some comments about it being slick getting into the garage. Some of that has to do with the freezing, some of it has to do with the way the garage is built. First couple floors of the garage have an epoxy on them. That's that kind of like a rubberized material that prevents moisture from getting into the office space. That adds to the slickness when it's raining, and then of course today, but still being treated to prevent accidents. Jason commented very thoroughly on the revenues of monthly parking and the parking operation, and monthly parkers being flat for the past several months. To get into a little more detail on the events, event parking, in November 15 we had 77 events, and in November 16 we had 54 events. But revenues were very similar. Some of that has to do with the rate, and a lot of it has to do with the size of the events and the types of events. Meaning in 16 we had more larger events for the basketball team and fewer smaller events with a couple hundred people. That's why those numbers are basically flat. Several months ago, the board approved us to do a software upgrade to the parking system. That software upgrade has been fully implemented. We are now on the virtual network. That was accomplished in December. Right now, we're working with the city's IT department to give us capabilities to offload that archived data onto the city network and retain it for an extended period of time, which will also enable us to enhance our reporting capabilities. for the parking system. Sheridan Walker Garage, just before Christmas, staff received the documents that will be used for releasing the RFP for the renovation/improvements to that garage. We're hopeful that we'll be back in the February board meeting asking for permission to release those the RFP documents. Again, over the holidays, our parking consultants that we brought in to help us assist with the RFP documents and the parking operator contract were received over the holidays. We're reviewing those and hoping to release that RFP in February.
All right.
Any questions?
So I forgot, our current parking contract expires when?
My apologies. Our contract with Republic Parking System, which has done a fine job to date, unfortunately, we've extended we've exercised all of our extension periods. That contract is set to expire June 30th.
Okay. All right. All right. No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
River cruises and Spokies.
Good morning.
The river's frozen and the bikes are,
Actually, they released just a little bit of water over the dams to keep some flow to keep it from freezing. We did in December lose a lot of charter business due to some weather, but I'll talk about that in my report. Our ridership through the end of the year, we actually were able to compile all the data through December 31st, is up 27% over 2015 and 39% over 2014. We attribute this increase to a very aggressive Facebook campaign and increased awareness of our services. Ridership was also up overall when you add in the specialty cruises and the charter business, so we're very happy to see those increases. Riders per service hour is how we measure the efficiency of the service, and our target for this fiscal year is 11, to average 11 riders per service hour. For the season, we actually averaged 12.41%, or 12.41 riders per service hour, and this is the result of good weather. We haven't had any events where we've had to shut down for several weeks, so we're able to continue and get a lot of riders that way. Also, the HMS staff continues to maintain contact with the hotels at the Meridian area, as well as Bricktown, and we've seen a lot of riders from other countries actually come in and use our ferry service to get into the Bricktown Entertainment District. Charters for the season are up 22% over last year. We would have hit that 2014 total, but of course, as I said, we had some cancellations in December because of weather. Otherwise, we would have probably surpassed that number. For Spokies, our bike trips for the calendar year saw a spike in July